Okay, 2017, England Is Mine. This is a movie based on the life of one Stephen Patrick Morrissey, who became the leader of the 80s music band The Smiths from Manchester. And those who watch this movie, a critic points out, diehard fans will be disappointed as there's no Smiths music in it, and it's about the years that lead up to the founding of the Smiths. And the music score is mostly 60s and 70s pop tunes that influenced Morrissey's musical taste, and we see a common struggling artist coming of age period piece. It's competently made, sporadically compelling, but not likely to pique the interest of anyone unfamiliar with Morrissey. It opens in 1976. He's 17 years old, loose ends, wandering the streets of Manchester in the company of his friend Angie Hardy, played by Catherine Pierce. Little purpose to his life. He is a musician without a band, and his fear of performing in public paralyses him. He obtains a creatively unsatisfying job working for the Inland Service, which does bring in some money, but it offers nothing beyond drudgery. He has no interest in pursuing a relationship with the office secretary Christine, played by Jodie Cormer. He prefers the company of his platonic friend Linda, played by Jessica Brown Finley, who's also an artist with sensibilities that match Morrissey's own, and she can match him quip for sardonic quip. Eventually he gets a musical breakthrough of sorts with a band called the Nosebleeds, but success slips through his fingers. The rest of the movie chronologises his struggle with depression, the way he manages recovery, and after jumping ahead to 1982, his return to music. The film ends on a hopeful note after he meets Johnny Marr, and they begin the collaboration that will evolve into the Smiths. Doesn't sound that appealing, but we're going to give it a second watch. I seem to recall my first watch, I was thoroughly bored. So let's see if my movie review hat will conjure up something of a greater interest second time around. So here goes. Early frames, we see Stephen Morrissey with a female companion at a gig late at night. Stephen's really pontificating about how depressing life is, nothing to look forward to. He does at least have a beer with his lady friend, but it's clear that they're not sort of girlfriend boyfriend as such. We then see them walking home after the gig. She's made a cryptic comment about the fact that if he pulled his finger out he could actually be up there on stage. As they walk home, she grabs his arm as they see a gang of lads who clearly know them, and one of the members of the gang makes a derogatory comment about Stephen's sexual identity, implying that he's possibly gay, and so this sort of sets the tone really for sort of working class scenario in an urban environment, i.e. Manchester, at the end of the 70s. So let's move on. He gets home and his father's first question is, have you got a job yet? And of course the answer is no, and Stephen again receives criticism from his father that the only way he can get a job is to get off his backside and go and look for a job, even though at this particular time unemployment was pretty rife in urban cities in the UK.
So there we are. The first sort of 20 minutes or so of this movie, we get sort of fleeting pictures of how Morrissey's life is unfolding. I think we catch a moment where his father leaves the family home, almost out of the blue. We then catch him falling out with this girl. She's very critical of the fact that he's totally devoid of any real personality and seems to be constantly depressed. We then catch him at a sort of club type evening event where we hear Virginia Plain being played on the sound system, and he doesn't interact really with anybody there. He's present but not involved. He then goes home and his mother's asleep, and he starts to channel his thoughts into typing out, one would assume, stories stroke lyrics, and he's got a room with an array of cuttings from magazines and music magazines on the walls, and he clearly sort of has a desire to get involved in the music business, but is unsure of what he might be able to offer, as he doesn't seem to be in a crowd where an opportunity is going to arise. As said earlier, he gets an office job for the Inland Service. I guess that's a government department of sorts, but he's clearly sort of hardly viewed by his boss as very competent. A bit of a muddled sort of desk which is totally untidy, and he is easily targeted by the boss for being hardly inefficient. So there again, no positive relationship that he can grasp on, as far as we've got so far. The two of them engage in a sort of little game which I found very amusing, where they quote famous phrases and the other has to guess who's responsible. And one particularly caught my eye when the girl says, Linda, be yourself, everyone else is taken. And of course Morrissey pops back and says Oscar Wilde, which I find one that I believe in. One thing that the movie definitely has going for it is the choice of music. Well, I think so. It's a sort of walk down memory lane. We caught a minute and a half of George Formby on his ukulele, and now we're listening to a 50s ballad which sounds like something that Brian Hyland might have done. All of these names, for those of you under 30 years of age, would mean nothing, of course, but an old fogey like me, of course, captured Brian Hyland on radio back in the early 60s. So, if you want a musical experience, then this movie is for you. But plot, well, it's quite amusing watching the frames unfold as we catch Morrissey's first gig, and with the band name Nosebleeds, which is apt considering a little earlier in the script he received one from some local lads who saw him as gay, bent, queer, whatever word you want to put to it. And then of course this gig, there's somebody from London who's looking for a new musical talent, and they get a card, and so the dream commences. When the info's passed on to his supervisors at work, he typically isn't interested at all, because he sees him as a loser. And if aspects of this script are accurate in terms of the actual what happened, then it's a very poignant moment as we approach the point where him and Johnny Marr meet. It's not a Keith Richard, Mick Jagger scenario on a railway station, but it's still pretty important in terms of how their musical careers took off together. So as we sort of move towards the finish line, there's a fairly large piece of the film that considers Morrissey's state of mind. He's clearly quite disturbed about his inability to relate to people, his rather distant relationship with his mother and his family, and the fact that he aspires to a creative future, writing material for song or what, but he's ill at ease, and his written work reflects that sort of disturbance within his own mind, and one could label it as being rather depressive, how he brings about the phrases and the lyric is very indicative of an original mind, but one that's very dark, and happiness is really not a word that you'd use to describe what he's producing. So I'm going to read an extract really from the screenplay to get some sort of understanding really of what we're dealing with here. You watching my review and possibly contemplating watching this movie. This is the opening narrative said by Morrissey at the beginning of the movie, and I quote: "Life, in this humdrum sense, is worth avoiding. It's the factory for the father and the kitchen for the mother. It's arguments at the dinner table, missing children on the news, and through it all a sense that things are slowly falling apart. Is it better to choose another record and flip the lid on the pills and wait for something to happen? Is it better to turn out the lights, climb under the covers until sleep invites you to a world you've always wanted? Is it better than the one that's in front of you, of us? Stop being a mad ass. 2 beers, please. If you spent as much time looking for a band as you do slagging them off, it could be you up there." That's a comment by the girl with Stephen as we switch to the first frames of the movie. So there we have it. The script
Well, it's available online at www.scripts.com. English is mine. Of course, written for this movie by Mark Gill, and he's a filmmaker from Stretford in Manchester, and responsible for this presentation. And this movie, I do believe, it cost over $300,000 to make. But anyway, what follows then, as we really do hit the last frames, is that infamous meeting between Morrissey and Johnny Marr, after Morrissey's initial guitar player basically says that the record company don't want him, and so Marr is a friend of his, and they meet after Marr knocks on his door, and as they say, the rest is history. So that's my few comments about English is Mine, the early life of Stephen Patrick Morrissey, 2017 release, and so good luck watching it.